What's up everyone? Today is my wrap up for January and I'm really excited because I did a really good job with tracking all of my stats, keeping up with my reading journal, reading exactly to my TBR, and I can't wait to tell you about the books that I read. First off, if you are not familiar, I have a really cool reading journal with my Reading to Zero spread. Reading to Zero is a challenge that I created last year in order to read all of the books that I currently own on my TBR shelf physically in my house, and I update you all on my numbers every single month. So for this month, I started with 80 books that was on my shelf for the beginning of the year. I ended up reading 7 of them, but I did haul 4 books this month. It was a little unintentional. It's fine. I think I can still get the challenge done by the end of the year. So I am finishing off with 77 books on my shelf. And like I said, I definitely think that that is doable since I want to be reading between 6 and 10 books every month. So I should be able to get to that. Now, I have multiple reading journal spreads for this year, and I will link those videos up there for you, but this is my Reading to Zero spread. So I pasted all of the books that I currently own on these 2 pages. I have a whole tutorial on how to do that. Is in my last video, so I will link that below as well. I love how this turns out, and so that way I can have a glimpse of all of the books that I currently need to read this year, and I've been putting the rating underneath them once I actually get them read. So that is turning out great. I did paste in my 4 hauls for this month, and we're gonna go over those in a little bit as well. I filled in my Goodreads spread, so I got 7 books read this month. Super excited about that. Then this is my reading at night chart. As you can see, I actually started doing a really good job, but then this is when I got my wisdom teeth out and I was just not feeling like reading very much, or especially reading at night. I started going back into my TikTok watching at night, which is very, very bad, but I did restart that. Today is the 31st. I'm not planning on reading anything unless it's after midnight so I can start my February TBR, but I did read last night in order to get myself back on track, but I really like this spread and it makes me it holds me accountable. And my next spread is my year in books. This is where I'm keeping track of my stats. So we're gonna go through that really quickly. For January, I read 7 books. I read 2,674 pages. 4 of the books I read physically. 2 of them I read as just an audiobook, and then 1 of them was a combo. So I switched between physical and audiobook or read it at the same time. Of all 7 books, they were all 7 adult books, so no young adult or middle grade. And then for my ratings, I had 3 5 stars, no 4 stars. I had 2 3 stars, 1 2 star, and 1 1 star, but no DNFs this month, so let's pat myself on the back for that one. And for these genres, I read 2 thriller books, 3 nonfiction books, and 2 romance books. Those are the stats that I'm keeping up with. I did put in for Patreon, this was the buddy read that we did for January, and February is Razor Blade Tears, so I did put that in there. If you wanna join me in reading that, then the link is down below, so you can become a patron and come buddy read that with me. Now, this is my official reading spread for this month. So these are the books that I read. I forgot to print off Never Knowing, but I don't want to waste a whole sticker paper, so I'm just waiting for the next month when I print off more books. But I filled in some of the stats here, and then that helped me when I was filling out my larger stats page. So I have pages, format, age, genre, and then the star rating. And then on this side, I did this reading calendar, so I kept track of what days I read which books and for how long I read them. And I really love that. That is something that I wanted to continue on this year. So super excited to continue that on. I have my little Reading to Zero spreads here, and then this was my hauled or secret TBRs. I didn't have any of those this month. If you go check out my February reading journal, you can see I already have my spread and my TBR set up for next month. So go ahead and check that out. Okay, let's talk about the 4 books that I hauled this month. So first off, my friend Lauren over on Instagram, she sent me White Smoke by Tiffany D. Jackson. I'm so excited, and she was so kind to send this to me. This is one of my favorite young adult authors, and I don't read young adult very often. I don't usually like young adult, but Tiffany D. Jackson does a really good job with incorporating adult themes, but for a young adult audience, which I appreciate. I believe this is a horror book, so we'll have to see how that's gonna work out. Then I had the publisher send me My Wife is Missing. So this came from St. Martin's Press, and I am super thankful to have this. This actually comes out, I believe, in April, so I'm gonna be trying to read this in March. This is DJ Palmer's new book, and I have read a few other DJ Palmer books. I actually read last year's release, and David Megan is one of my favorite books, so I am super excited to read this. And you know, I love like domestic thrillers, and this is about a missing wife. If you watched my video last month, you know that I was unhauling Hunger by Roxane Gay, but Gwen convinced me to give this a try because I was unhauling this. I thought it was like a poetry book or just something along those lines, but it's actually a memoir about Roxane Gay, and I love memoirs, so I'm gonna go ahead and try it out. I'm actually gonna be trying to read it this month, so I'm super excited about that, and hopefully it was a good decision for me to put it back on my TBR. And then last but not least, I did purchase this book. This is Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. I pre-ordered this because I'm a huge Colleen Hoover fan, and she's like the only person that I pre-order. So really excited. I am also going to be reading this book this month, so super excited for that. Those were the 4 books that I added to my shelf. Let's go ahead and talk about the books that I read. Okay, I've seen other booktubers go in order of their rating system. I believe Haley over at Haley Hughes does that, and I really, really love that because you kind of remember like what rating she's on, and you're also looking forward to like the 5 stars coming up. So I'm going to do that. I'm gonna start with my 1 star of the month. This was the buddy read for Patreon, and unfortunately, it just did not work for me. This is The Cabin by Jasinda Wilder. This is like an indie romance book, and I gave it 1 star because in my opinion it was very unrealistic and very cheesy. And the reason that I wanted to read this book is because I wanted to have this really big emotional feel to it, and I honestly didn't get that. I'll go over some of the things that kind of irritated me, but if you want to hear more of my thoughts, I actually have a spoiler vlog for this. I'll link that up above for you in case you want to go watch that. That's also the vlog where I got my wisdom teeth out. There's some content like that in there. This book is about Nadia, and she is married to her husband Adrian. Adrian is a writer and Nadia is a nurse, but Adrian finds out that he has like stage 4 cancer. He's going to die. He does not tell his wife about that, which is something that really bothered me. But once he gets closer to death, he does tell his wife about it, and you do know that he's going to die. That is on the back of this book. But once he's dead, then Nadia continues on with her life, and I thought it was going to be an emotional book about like her grief and how she's getting along with life, but she just has everything great happen to her. She ends up like having a bunch of money. She doesn't have to work. She goes to this cabin, and I don't want to tell you the ending, but like it was just not what I would expect it to be in real life. Like if you were going through this in real life, this is not the life that you would live. These are not the circumstances that would happen. So that is one of the reasons why I gave it 1 star. I also just felt that it was extremely fast-paced, but in the wrong way, because I wanted to like see more of that grief that Nadia had, but it felt like she moved on with her life too quickly. Whereas I do think a book that does that really well is One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I feel like you do feel the grief that the character has, and it's years later that she kind of like goes along with her life. So that is why I did not like this book. Okay, we're moving on to the 2-star read that I had this month. This is Never Knowing by Chevy Stevens. I am pretty sad that this is a 2-star because I have read Those Girls by Chevy Stevens and absolutely loved it. So I assumed that I was going to like most of her books. I can see myself not remembering this book very much. Actually, there's a few books that I have this month where I just feel like they're gonna be non-memorable. This is about this lady named Sarah, and she's always wondered about her birth parents. She was adopted at a young age. She has a child herself, and she's about to get married, but all these questions keep coming up about like who her mother or father might be. So she goes on the hunt to try and find her birth parents. It is no secret, it says in the synopsis, that her dad is actually the campsite killer, who is a popular serial killer. He used to go around and rape women and kill them, and he had raped her original mom, not murdering her, so that's why she was able to have this baby that grew up and then got adopted. The actual story of this was pretty interesting, but the problem is that this book went on way too long, and so there were many instances where the police were trying to use Sarah in order to like lure her father into, you know, them being able to put him in prison and arrest him, but she was also kind of like bonding with her father a little bit, or at least he was trying to bond with her. There were so many instances where they were calling each other and talking over a phone and then trying to set up a meeting, and I swear that probably happened like 3 or 4 times, and then the call falls happened like probably like 50 times. Like it just seemed like it was over and over again, very repetitive. And by the time I got to the end of the book, it wasn't like I was shocked by anything. And I felt like I kind of read the story for no reason. The person that was evil in the end, it was just kind of like very laughable, and I didn't understand why that person was made the evil character. All in all, it was just a 2-star. I definitely would skip this and wouldn't recommend this to any thriller lovers. Okay, now we're moving on to the 3-star reads. I read John Marr's When You Disappeared, and this is definitely one of those books that I am not gonna remember in the future. I actually read this at the beginning of the month, and I gotta think for a second on what even happened in this book because I don't remember. This is about a married couple named Catherine and Simon, and one of the days that Catherine wakes up, they actually have like kids together. Simon has disappeared, and she is pretty sure that like he hasn't just left them, that like something happened to him. But this book is dual POVs, so you do hear from his side of things, and you do know that he's alive and well and that he left her. So the rest of the book is all about like what made him leave his wife. Like what was that moment that he decided, why did he leave his wife and children and then go start another life somewhere? You get to see how Catherine kind of survives that, because I mean, she has like 4 kids that are like under 4 or something crazy like that. And for your husband to just up and leave you, I did really feel for Catherine. I really liked her as a character. And you got to see how she like made her own business and just was able to make ends meet, and I really appreciated that in here. But Simon, I hated Simon with a passion. Like he is definitely one of those characters that you are not going to like, and you're gonna spend the whole entire book like just being angry at him and like just being like, why are you doing this? This book got some like feelings from me just because of my hatred for Simon, but again, it wasn't something very memorable, and I'm definitely not gonna really remember what this book is about later in life. So it was just a 3-star for me. It wasn't like incredibly thrilling. It also wasn't like super boring. I did read this pretty quickly, and I listened to the audiobook, so it was decent. Okay, another 3-star read. This one I actually just finished late last night. This book has given me so many different emotions, and I think I'm rating it a 3-star just because it's just, okay, let me just show you, okay? This is Jodi Picoult. Is that how I'm supposed to say it? Lena was teaching me how to say it. I think she said the U, L, and the T are silent, or the L and the T are silent. Jodi Picoult. Jodi Picoult. We're gonna say that. Okay. This is Jodi Picoult, The Pact. And this is my first Jodi Picoult book that I read, and a lot of people told me to read this. I had bought 2 books from second sale like back in the summertime, and I had asked for suggestions on which of the 2 to try. And The Pact is the book that I had to read for Patreon, because on Patreon they get to choose a book that I have to read that month. So had to read this one, and I definitely waited to the very last minute. This book was really, really long. It doesn't look like it, but the font is super, super tiny, and the audiobook is 17 hours long. So I actually this is the book that I did a dual, where I read some of it in physical books, some of it in audiobook. And I will definitely say that the second half of this book was way more interesting than the first half of the book. I feel like this book could have been cut down a lot, probably by half, honestly, and it still would have been absolutely amazing, and I probably would have rated it higher. The reason that I rated it 3 stars is because it was so long that if I wouldn't have had to read this book, I probably would have DNF'd it in the first half because of it being just very blah and boring. But the second half is good. So let me break it down for you. The first half was like a 2-star, and the second half was like a 4-star. So that's why I'm kind of like rating it 3, because I have mixed feelings about it. So this book is about Chris and Emily. They have literally grown up their whole entire life together. So they lived next door to each other for 18 years of their life. Their parents were friends. They all got pregnant at the same time. They had Chris, they had Emily, and they literally grew up and then became like boyfriend and girlfriend, and they were always entangled in every single thing that they did in their life. The beginning of this story is pretty intriguing, where you find out that Chris and Emily are being rushed to the hospital, and Emily is actually dead. She was shot, and that's where the whole mystery story begins, because, okay, you have one alive person and it's Chris, and then you have one dead person and it's Emily. what the heck happened? You know, is Chris actually telling the truth? So the whole story is based off of, was this a suicide or was this a murder? And the second half of the book actually goes into like the legal courtroom system, and most of the second half is actually like, it feels like you are sitting in the courtroom discussing this. And normally I feel like I don't really like courtroom scenes, but I feel like this was done pretty well. It just needed to be sped up a little bit. But I was very interested because I guess I just didn't realize that everything about law isn't about the truth. It has like a quote somewhere in there about it, but like literally it's all about evidence. It's not about the truth. And that shocks me, but also it scares me because there's so many people that are convicted that are actually innocent just because of the evidence saying something. And so we find out what happens at the end, so you know what happens. But throughout the whole story, I honestly wasn't sure what happened. Like, I wasn't sure who to believe. I felt kind of wishy-washy on what I thought happened, and I did really appreciate that. It's definitely a story that is like sticking with me. Like I felt like when I finished it last night, I was like, oh my gosh, like I need some wine or something, because it is like, I do like stories like that. Like, I like when they make you think. I like when they make you wonder what you would do in that situation. Like, you know, if you were on the jury, who would you choose? Or are you gonna choose guilty? Or are you gonna choose not guilty? Like, what is going on here? And I liked that, but I just didn't feel like I could quite give it a 4-star rating because of how long it was. I was at work and there were so many times I was like, this book is so long. I was like, I just wanna know, is it suicide? Is it murder? Tell me, please. Like, that's how I felt while reading this book. I do feel like you should give this a chance if you don't mind long books, if you don't mind lots of storytelling. I think that you would really like it. But if you're someone that you don't like reading long books and you like straight to the point, quick thrillers, then I think you might be bored in the first half and you might not get to the second half, if that makes sense. Okay, now on to my 5-star reads. I had 3 of them. The first one is The Black Friend on Being a Better White Person. This is by Frederick Joseph. I absolutely loved this, and I am actually going to be lending this out to a friend today at work, and then I also want to start lending it out to my family. I have a brother who I know would be interested in reading this, and this is an amazing book about race and being anti-racist. Literally, Frederick Joseph does everything for you. Like, he tells you exactly why things have happened. I love that he has a little like dictionary in the back where he even tells you like what different things are, like microaggressions, what stereotyping is, what color blindness is, what white privilege, being a white savior, all of that stuff. But I also really, really loved it because it was part memoir. So I learned a lot about racism in general, but I also got to see how he grew up, different instances that he had. And when someone is telling you their story, I just feel like he did such a great job where I definitely understood what he was saying. I know that it is hard to understand what it's like to be in other people's shoes, and I'm definitely not saying that I do understand. I felt like he broke it down well enough for me to be like, that actually makes sense. Like, why is racism still a thing? Like, why are we treating them like that? You know, why is this happening? I also found myself cracking up at this book a lot. Frederick is very, very, very funny the way he tells stories. I love he has like different parts in here where he like has like a, you know, like little notes, or he has like a pause button and he'll be like, this is why this happened. You need to look this up and learn about this. And I just absolutely love that. Like, this is a really great book. Okay, the next 5-star that I read was Real Food for Pregnancy. I know probably most of you aren't really interested in this book, so I'll keep it really short and sweet. But this is kind of based on the Weston A. Price Foundation, where you eat a lot of older traditional foods. Like, you go back to like before foods were processed. So you eat fermented foods, you eat raw dairy, you sprout your grains and you soak your grains and you make sourdough and all that kind of stuff. So really, really liked this. I learned a lot from it. I'm giving it 5 stars because I thought it was super informational, and this is exactly how I want to eat and live during my pregnancy. I know it's not gonna be for everyone because not everyone thinks the same on those topics, but for me, I do, and this was amazing. All right, the last book I want to talk about is Spilled Milk. This is a nonfiction memoir. It is a true story. It says based on true story, but she did change some of the names, but the actual story is true. This was a 5-star read for me. It was the first book I read in 2022 and I flew through it in one day. It was so good. Some people had said that they had a problem with the writing style, but I had no problem with it at all, and I feel like I normally am very picky with writing styles. It was super fast paced, it was super dark, it was super upsetting. I wanted to throw up. This is about Brooke, who is sexually abused by her father for the majority of her life, and how that affects her with her childhood, her life growing up, her future life. She's actually on TikTok, which if you read this book, you should definitely hop over there and watch some of her videos, because the characters like actually come to life and you're like, oh, that's who she was talking about. So I highly suggest reading this book if you love like nonfiction memoirs, if you like reading things about child abuse. I mean, obviously you're not enjoying the child abuse, but if you are interested in topics like that, or if you're interested in really dark, messed up books, this one definitely had me like feeling a lot of emotions, and it was really sad. Like, don't get me wrong. Sometimes I feel like when I rate things 5 stars, like people are like, oh, so you like reading about that stuff? And it's like, yeah, I do, but it's because I like feel for the author, if that makes sense. So really love this book. Definitely suggest reading this one. All right, that was all of the books that I read in January. Super excited for February. I have a bunch picked out from my actual shelf. Gonna be, you know, plowing through this Reading to Zero challenge. Hope you all have a great rest of your month. Let me know what your favorite book was that you read in January, and I will see you all very soon in another video. Bye, everyone.
Close your eyes. Get some rest. I'm by your side. Lay your head on my chest. You've had